Parker Schnabel was deep in the 2024 Yukon mining season, and everything was starting to feel impossible. His goal of hitting 10,000 ounces of gold seemed further away than ever. Every day, the crew pushed machines, trucks, and wash plants as hard as they could, yet the numbers just weren't adding up. Every ounce felt hard-earned, every day felt stretched, and every small mistake threatened to derail weeks of work. That's how Parker found himself staring at a problem that could have ended the season before it really began. It started with a routine job, something that should have been simple, but for Parker and his team, nothing was ever routine anymore. A warning went out over the radio. The machinery they were running could act just like a zipper. If it caught on anything, it could rip the belt wide open, damaging expensive equipment and costing hours of precious time. The crew scrambled to fix the issue, and every able hand was called into action. Alec, Liam, and others rushed to the scene to help, their hands busy, their minds focused, and their bodies moving under intense pressure. Every second counted. Amid the chaos, a new crew member, Tavern, was struggling. He was young, barely out of his teens, and eager to prove himself. But the work was relentless. Parker had thrown him straight into the high-stakes environment without much time to adjust. Tavern was in control of a machine worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, trying to widen a road along the cut while dumping material into a gap. The ground beneath him was unstable, sloughing under the weight of the truck. For a moment, the cab shifted, and Tavern froze. He did exactly what he needed to do. He stopped and called for help. His voice was tight, heavy with stress as he spoke to his foreman, Mitch Blasey, over the radio. Mitch was already dealing with a full day of complications. Machines were failing, pay dirt was running low at Roxanne, and new crew members needed training. And now he had to drop everything to deal with an emergency rescue. He knew the risks. One wrong move, and not just the truck, but the dozer and maybe even other equipment could be lost. Time was slipping away as the team worked to stabilize the situation. Mitch arrived in the massive D10 dozer, assessing the situation quickly. He saw the danger immediately. The ground was soft, and even his powerful machine began to slide as he approached. He knew precision was key. Mitch began an intricate operation, using his experience and skill to rebuild the ground beneath Tavern's truck. Fresh material was brought in, shaped carefully with the dozer to create a safety berm. Mitch instructed Tavern on how to maneuver carefully, step by step, to get the truck back to solid ground. Inch by inch, the tires dug into the new fill, and the truck slowly crawled back to safety. The relief was immediate. Tavern was shaken, exhausted from the near disaster, but safe. Mitch, ever the nonsense veteran, brushed off Tavern's thanks, insisting he get back to work. That close call highlighted a bigger problem. Parker's ambitious 10,000-ounce goal was stretched crew to the absolute limit, leaving little room for error. Big Red, the secondary plant in Parker's operation, was proving to be another challenge. The material there contained very little gold, and production was dismal. In the previous week, Big Red had only produced 30 ounces, far below expectations. Every hour, every gallon of fuel, and every machine movement felt wasted. Parker knew he couldn't rely on Big Red to hit his record-breaking goal. It was meant to be a support plant, but instead it added pressure to Roxanne, the main operation at the long cut. Roxanne had to carry the burden of keeping the entire season alive, and the pressure was heavy on Mitch, who had to feed the wash plant consistently with pay dirt, despite a shortage of machines and experienced operators. The pressure was relentless. Parker's crew was spread thin across multiple locations, and mistakes from rookies like Tavern weren't just slowing progress, they were threatening to create catastrophic delays. Every decision Parker made had to account for the human factor, the limitations of machines, and the unpredictability of the ground. Roxanne, the plant everyone relied on, was constantly at risk of running out of material. Without pay dirt, even the best-run plant would grind to a halt. Parker's gamble of running at maximum capacity every day required flawless execution, and even minor disruptions could destroy weeks of planning. Then came the moment that would change everything. The weekly gold weigh-in arrived, and Parker met Mitch with tension thick in the air. The entire crew had worked tirelessly, facing near disasters and equipment failures, and now the results would show whether all that effort had paid off. The first cleanup came from Big Red, the plant no one had high hopes for. As the gold was poured onto the scale, the numbers climbed slowly, 30, 40, 50 ounces, and the final count landed at 55.8 ounces. It was almost double the previous week's poor showing of 30 ounces, worth about $140,000, but considering the resources spent, it was still disappointing. Parker wasn't impressed. Big Red had proven that it wasn't going to contribute significantly to the season's goal, leaving all the pressure on Roxanne. When Roxanne's gold was brought out, the atmosphere shifted. This was the cleanup the crew had fought for all week, the payoff for every drop of sweat, every hour, and every near disaster. As the gold was poured, the scale shot past 50 ounces, 90 ounces, then over 100 ounces. The numbers kept climbing, 130, 150, 170, and finally settled at an incredible 171.95 ounces. The room erupted. That single cleanup was worth just under $430,000. The crew's hard work had finally paid off. It was a season-saving cleanup, proving that the long cut held the key to Parker's 10,000-ounce goal. The massive hit lifted morale, justified the high stakes, and provided a clear signal that their strategy, risky as it was, could work. Despite the celebration, Parker remained focused. While the crew cheered, he was calculating. With the weekly total from Big Red and Roxanne combined, they reached 227.75 ounces. It was an impressive win for any operation, but Parker knew it was only a small step toward the season's ambitious target. They were still 9,200 ounces short. Even with the massive $430,000 cleanup, they had only scratched the surface of what Parker aimed to achieve. The reality of the Yukon mining season was harsh, and there was no room for complacency. Every ounce counted, and Parker's mind was already planning the next steps. The $430,000 find wasn't just a payday, it was a clue, a hint of a much larger potential deposit. Parker's mind raced with possibilities. Could this patch be part of a paleo channel, an ancient riverbed packed with gold, or a hidden gold highway holding tens of thousands of ounces? If it was, the operation could shift from survival mode to record-breaking production. But if he chased the wrong direction, months of work could be wasted, along with the immense cost of fuel, machinery, and labor. Parker had to plan carefully, weighing the geological risks and potential rewards, knowing one misstep could be catastrophic. He also considered the possibility of false bedrock. The Klondike is notorious for misleading miners with hard-packed clay or barren rock layers that mimic the bottom of a deposit. If the $430,000 cleanup rested on a false bedrock, they would only have collected surface gold while the true pay layer lay buried deeper. Parker couldn't afford to guess. He needed data, precision, and decisive action. His orders were clear: run multiple plants simultaneously, test different locations, and commit machines to drilling deep until true bedrock was confirmed. There was no time for error, no margin for hesitation. Parker's crew returned to work with renewed urgency. The stakes had never been higher. Every truck, loader, and wash plant operator had to perform flawlessly. Mistakes could cost tens of thousands of dollars, or worse, weeks of lost progress. The entire operation now revolved around identifying whether the rich patch at Roxanne was part of a massive new deposit or a fleeting anomaly. Each day required careful planning, rapid execution, and the ability to adapt to unexpected conditions in the Yukon wilderness. The $430,000 find had changed everything, but it also signaled the start of an even greater challenge. Parker's gamble had worked once, but the real test was whether they could scale up and maintain production to reach the 10,000-ounce goal. The very next day, Parker and his crew were back at it, eyes fixed on the long cut and Roxanne. The excitement from the $430,000 haul was still fresh, but there was no time to rest. In the Yukon, the season moves fast, and every delay could cost them valuable gold. Parker knew that the rich patch they just uncovered could be a game changer, but only if they worked quickly and intelligently. The plan was simple but brutal. Move more dirt, process more material, and figure out exactly where the gold was coming from. Every truck, every loader, and every machine had to be in sync, and every operator had to perform without mistakes. Mitch Blassie, the foreman, was under immense pressure. He had to keep Roxanne fed with pay dirt while simultaneously training newer operators and supervising the rest of the crew. The machines weren't cooperating as smoothly as Parker wanted either. Heavy rainfall had softened parts of the cut, making trucks slide and sometimes stall in soft fill. Operators had to maneuver with incredible precision, inching forward on unstable ground, balancing the weight of massive loads with the slightest movement. Mistakes could lead to accidents or equipment damage, and there was no margin for error. Even small disruptions meant lost hours of production, and in Parker's high-stakes world, lost hours equaled lost gold. Despite these obstacles, the crew moved forward. They ran multiple plants, spreading across different sections of the cut to maximize the potential of the new gold patch. Every pan, every scoop of dirt was analyzed carefully. Parker didn't just want gold. He needed confirmation that this wasn't a one-off strike. The $430,000 find was promising, but it had to be repeatable. The long cut was vast, and even within a single property, gold could be unevenly distributed. One area might be a treasure trove, while the next could be nearly barren. That made planning critical. Parker spent hours studying maps, assessing elevations, and marking where the heaviest concentrations were likely to appear. By midweek, the crew's stamina was being tested like never before. Operators were exhausted, moving tons of material day after day, and the mental strain of operating under constant pressure weighed on everyone. Tavin, who had faced his near disaster earlier in the week, was now more confident, but the stakes were higher. Even experienced operators like Mitch and Alec were feeling the pressure. Fatigue is a hidden enemy in gold mining. A single moment of distraction or hesitation could cost thousands of dollars in lost gold or damaged machinery. Parker knew this, and he had to keep morale high while pushing his team to their limits. Each cleanup became a battle against time. Trucks were constantly shuttling dirt to Roxanne, and the wash plant ran non-stop. The operation was a complex dance of logistics, where a delay in one area could ripple through the entire system. If a truck broke down or a machine jammed, it could create a bottleneck, halting production until the problem was fixed. Parker had spent the season learning that flexibility and quick problem-solving were just as important as raw mining skill. Every decision had to weigh risk against reward, and even a small miscalculation could undo days of hard work. Then came another breakthrough. After carefully analyzing the previous day's pans, Parker noticed a pattern in the distribution of gold at Roxanne. Certain benches in the cut consistently produced more gold than others. This wasn't luck. It was a sign of a potential buried channel or a richer section of the ancient riverbed. Parker immediately redirected crews, moving more machines and operators to these hotspots. The work was backbreaking and relentless, but the potential reward justified every ounce of effort. By the end of the week, the team had processed more material than ever before. Trucks had hauled countless tons of pay dirt, and the wash plant had been running continuously, barely a pause. When the gold was finally weighed, the numbers were staggering. The weekly total had climbed even higher than before. Each cleanup brought new excitement and new hope, confirming that the $430,000 find was not a fluke. The patch was real, and it held the promise of far more gold than anyone had expected. But even as they celebrated, Parker remained focused. This wasn't a moment for complacency. The season's goal of 10,000 ounces was still far away. Every ounce counted, and while the crew's morale soared, Parker's mind was already calculating the next steps. He studied geological maps, planned machine placements, and coordinated crews with military precision. He knew that maximizing the potential of this rich patch required careful strategy, constant monitoring, and the ability to adapt to changing conditions. The following days were a blur of activity. Roxanne continued to deliver impressive amounts of gold, while Big Red showed occasional spikes that, although smaller, were enough to keep the secondary plant relevant. Parker had his crew running at full capacity, with trucks shuttling material to the wash plant without pause. Each operator knew their role, and the new crew members, once green and inexperienced, were quickly gaining confidence under Mitch's guidance. The rhythm of the operation was intense, but it was beginning to show results. Parker's strategy also involved exploring different depths and angles in the cut. He had to consider the possibility of false bedrock, making sure that every scoop of dirt was truly valuable. Operators dug carefully, monitoring water tables, soil composition, and gold concentration. Parker wanted to be certain that the rich patch they had found wasn't superficial, but part of a much larger, deeper deposit. Every decision had a financial consequence, and Parker's leadership was critical in keeping the operation both productive and safe. By mid-season, it was clear that Parker's gamble was paying off. The crew was exhausted, but motivated. Roxanne had become a gold-producing powerhouse, and even Big Red, when managed correctly, added steady contributions. Parker's calculated risk had started to yield real rewards, validating the countless hours of planning, the near disasters, and the relentless push to move as much material as possible. The $430,000 hit was only the beginning. It was the signal of a potential gold-rich vein that could define the entire season. As the weeks progressed, Parker's operation entered a rhythm that was almost machine-like, but the stakes had never been higher. Every morning, the crew gathered at Roxanne, stretching out the long day with the goal of pushing past last week's incredible haul. Each operator knew the importance of their role. Trucks transported dirt across the cut with precision, loaders and excavators moved mountains of material, and the wash plant churned continuously, processing tons of pay dirt. The excitement of discovering the $430,000 patch had fueled the crew's energy, but fatigue was always lurking. Parker walked the cut constantly, assessing progress, measuring gold concentration, and ensuring that no ounce of valuable material was wasted. He understood that in gold mining, it was not just about finding gold, it was about moving it efficiently, extracting it carefully, and preserving every speck through precise cleanup. Even a tiny error in handling concentrate or processing could mean losing hundreds or thousands of dollars worth of gold. Parker knew that the work done in the field and the diligence in the gold room were equally critical. The $430,000 patch continued to influence decisions. Parker started directing crews to expand operations around the discovery, testing different depths and stretches of the cut. He wanted to confirm whether this was an isolated strike or part of a larger ancient channel of gold. Historical maps of the area, combined with careful observation of pay dirt distribution, guided the placements of machines and operators. Each shift became a careful balance between pushing production and avoiding mistakes that could damage equipment or endanger the crew. Meanwhile, the human side of the operation became more apparent. Taven, who had nearly lost his truck in a previous mishap, had grown more confident and skilled. He now operated with precision and efficiency, keeping pace with the demands of the high-stakes environment. Rookie mistakes were becoming rarer, and Mitch worked tirelessly to ensure that every operator, young or old, stayed on task. The crew's coordination was improving, but the pressure never let up. Parker reminded everyone daily that gold mining in the Yukon was unforgiving. Weather could change in minutes, machines could break without warning, and even the richest patch of gold would not save a sloppy or careless operation. As the next weekly cleanup approached, tension in the camp was palpable. Everyone knew that numbers could make or break the season.
Roxanne had already shown it could deliver massive returns, and Parker hoped that Big Red could finally provide a meaningful contribution. Trucks lined up with heavy loads of pay dirt, the wash plant roared to life, and the crew prepared for the moment that would tell them if all their effort was paying off. When the first container from Big Red was brought to the gold room, Parker watched closely as Chris Dumit began the meticulous cleanup process. Every mat, every sluice box was handled carefully. The first pan revealed a modest total. While it wasn't huge, it set a baseline for the week. Parker understood that Big Red had been inconsistent all season, but every ounce counted, and even a modest haul could help balance the massive numbers they needed. Next, Chris moved to the Roxanne material. The container was heavier than the first, promising a big result. The scale began to climb steadily as the gold was poured out. 50 ounces, 100, 150, 170, 200. The numbers continued to rise, and Parker could feel the energy in the room shift. Crew members exchanged glances, their excitement growing with every ounce. When the final total was revealed, it was staggering. 171.95 ounces from Roxanne alone. That single cleanup was worth almost $430,000, confirming that the patch they had discovered was not only real, but exceptionally rich. The crew erupted with excitement, cheering and clapping, but Parker remained focused. This wasn't just a payday, it was data. The $430,000 haul validated their strategy, but also indicated that the operation still needed more work to reach the season's ambitious goal of 10,000 ounces. Parker did the quick math in his head. They were still thousands of ounces short, and time was slipping away. Winter would soon arrive, freezing the ground and halting mining entirely if they didn't accelerate production. Parker immediately began issuing new orders. He directed crews to expand the cut, process more material, and test multiple depths to ensure they were hitting the richest sections of the patch. Trucks moved dirt faster, loaders worked tirelessly, and the wash plant ran non-stop. Parker coordinated every detail, from operator placement to sluice box management, ensuring that no ounce of gold was lost. Every decision mattered, and the pressure on the crew intensified. As the week progressed, Roxanne continued to deliver massive successes.
Returns. Big Red added smaller but steady contributions, helping maintain overall momentum. Parker was calculating every move, thinking about the best strategy to maximize the new patch's potential. He had to balance immediate production with careful testing to avoid wasting resources or missing deeper deposits. The gold room remained the heart of the operation, where every ounce was preserved and every calculation mattered. By the end of the week, the cumulative total was remarkable. The crew had processed more material than any previous week, and the combined haul from Roxanne and Big Red had pushed weekly gold totals into record territory. The $430,000 cleanup had not only saved the week, but also reinvigorated the entire operation. Crew members were exhausted but proud, knowing that their relentless work and careful coordination had paid off. However, Parker knew that the work was far from over. The $430,000 discovery was a major milestone, but it was also a reminder of the challenges ahead. They were still far from the 10,000-ounce season goal, and every ounce moving forward would require the same intensity, focus, and precision that had defined the week. Parker's mind raced with possibilities, evaluating new areas of the cut, adjusting machine placements, and planning for potential obstacles. The discovery also brought a new perspective on risk management. Parker realized that chasing high-stakes gold required careful decision-making and adaptability. Every operator, every machine, and every ounce of material had to be managed with extreme care. Mistakes could be costly, and miscalculations could jeopardize the entire season. The $430,000 patch was proof that their high-risk strategy could work, but it was also a reminder that the margin for error was razor thin. As the season moved forward, Parker continued to expand operations, pushing the boundaries of the long cut and Roxon.